Hey, everybody. It's hot out, huh?
Yes.
End of July. So we're enjoying a white wine tonight from the region of Muscadet in France, and that's what we're going to talk about. Is everyone here? Raise your glass if you're drinking Muscadet. Cheers. And cheers if you're not. You know, like this is more like a happy hour, it's not some structured format where, you're sitting in class and having to take notes and, not going to question you on anything. So I wanted to bring up Muscadet because, for those of you that have been on my calls, since it's summer, I'm trying to keep wines light and fresh and easy drinking and thirst quenching, if you will. So Muscadet is the region in France. The grape is Melon de Bourgogne. It has nothing to do with Bourgogne, France, Burgundy, France. It's just the name of the grape that goes into Muscadet. And it's almost exclusively the only grape that's planted in the region of Muscadet. There's like maybe one or two others. I won't go into that. But it is a fantastic region. I've been asked several times in the past when talking about Muscadet if it's related to Moscato. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Moscato. It sort of became famous recently, but zero relation. As you can tell, for those that are drinking this Muscadet, it's not at all sweet. It's bone dry. If you would like to cut to the slides, if you go to number 2, I can just show you on the map, and then we're going to dial in like I've been doing every week of how closer we're going to get. So the green region and the far, we've talked about the Loire before. It is the largest wine growing region in France, just meaning that it spans, you can see how far it spans. It spans about half of the country. And if you go to the next slide, we are in these are the sub-regions within the Loire Valley. So we are the far east side here in the Pays Nantais, that red region. And Muscadet, as you can see that it's listed there, is the name within that region. So did I say east? I meant west side of France, sorry. There's a major city in there on the just like northwest of Muscadet called Nantes. And I'll get into that later, share some of my experience there. Really awesome city, but that's sort of what drives the region there. It was like, it used to just be a sleepy port town, but now it's not. And you can dive into the next slide. So here's Muscadet sort of in detail. You can see how close it is to the Atlantic Ocean. And so Muscadet is divided up into 4 regions, and it'll be listed on the bottle. So unless you bought something domestically, we all have French, correct, tonight? I'm pretty sure. It's going to say Muscadet on the label. And France, Italy, they always pay respects to the region where the grapes are grown than just putting the name of the grape on the label. So that's been a question that's come up, I think, each episode when I've talked about like French and Italian, is people have asked, well, how do I know what grape is in that? And that's why I like doing these, is because now you know that the grape that goes into Muscadet is the Melon de Bourgogne grape, which is in the chat, like if you just want to learn how to spell it. So the 4 regions, and these all so Muscadet is the largest general region that you can see on the map here of all the regions. And so the wines here, they're going to be okay. They're going to be good. They're not going to be the best. But once you start diving into Muscadet Sèvres-Etmann, which is a smaller region within Muscadet, it's the most popular, most widely planted of all of the sub-regions. in all of Muscadet, and it's the one that you're mostly going to see on retail shelves as well as on your in retail and restaurant wine lists. And that's what I have. It's arguably the most popular and has the highest quality. How it got its name and what you can see on the map, there are two rivers that go into the region, and it plays, so these two rivers along with the Atlantic pay a major presence in the terroir of that region. And if you look a little further north in this map, we have Muscadet Coteau de la Loire. You don't see that as much, and Muscadet de Grand Lieu. And any other questions before I move to the next slide, or any comments? Does everyone have Muscadet Sévraman, or what's on your labels?
Yeah, let's see what everyone has. What do you got?
Mine's the Sévraman.
Okay.
The one that you picked.
Yeah.
I had two, and I replied to Nicole's message. And I was
It
like,
looks like you and Jimmy have the same wine. Is that right? Do you guys have the same wine?
They do.
And I think it was the one. Didn't I show?
Where'd you go back?
You helped me
Last
pick
week.
that out last week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went to Off the Rocks. I walked in.
You went
I
off
was
the rocks.
like,
I went to
need
Canton
this.
Crossing this time.
And they're like, this is the only one we have. I was like, I will take it. It's fine.
It's actually one of the best Muscadets out there, which you guys both have.
It's delicious. It's really good.
Yeah, it's a really killer wine importer that brings it in the United States. Louis Dresner. I don't know if it may say that on the back label or not.
Yes,
but
it does.
yeah, killer wine. Actually,
Nicole, did you have Muscadet as well?
yeah, from the
Yeah.
same region.
It's the same wine.
Yeah.
Same region, different producer.
And we
I
have
actually had the label on my phone, so I took the picture to show,
we have the same
to show
thing.
Nicole earlier.
Yeah.
Right?
Different producer, Dave. Different producer,
Yeah.
our wine, just same region, Sévraman.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the next slide, so that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are liking that wine.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm just going back because I'm looking, how big is this area? This red area, or now it's in blue. How big is that? I mean,
Yeah.
Nantes is not, I've been to Nantes. It's not that big of a city.
It's a very small city. This is not a large region. As far as like how much is planted to vine, I don't know exactly. I mean, like this is like stuff that a master sommelier could answer off a heart.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you knew. I mean, it looks.
You can
it's really
see
large
how-
on this
yeah.
map, but
It's very small.
yeah.
It's just, but the overall Loire Valley is the largest wine growing region. Muscadet for white wine production in the Loire Valley is like the workhorse of the Loire. It's pretty amazing. And Sévraman is the largest production of all of the regions, even outside of just like generic Muscadet, whether you can believe that or not. Because usually it's like the opposite. What's also really awesome about this region is it's primarily still all family owned. Like you don't have that many big companies that have gone in and snatched up these wineries, like, which is really rad. I mean, like stuff like that happens in Bordeaux, Champagne, Burgundy, other regions within France. So, you know, quality here has just been improving because it's just been wineries. You can go to the next slide. So this was when I was there. This kind of looks like the way California looked this morning, overcast. So this, where I took this photo, was at one of the higher elevations within the region. This is not at all a high elevation region at all. It's gentle rolling hills. It is an Atlantic dominated countryside. But where I am standing along this vineyard was basically, they were ripping out some vineyards. You can see it looks like a dirt road, but that's actually where vines used to be planted. And that's actually clay, rocky soil there, which I'll talk about in a second. But I am facing east here, essentially. So I'm sort of looking towards the Atlantic. And again, my camera didn't do justice just because of the lighting of the day. But you can see that it's not like, you know, when we've talked about like Piedmont, and you see like these patchworks and these just big hillsides, steep hillsides and things like that. And when we've talked about Alto Adige and things like that, so it's just kind of the polar opposite here. And so soils here are sandy, clay that I mentioned, which you can see is kind of dominant here by that color, rock, and also schist, which I'm going to show you. I forgot to bring my rock. Like, this is like why I'm such a geek. I was in this vineyard, and we actually went down into where these vines are a little further south, and there's like this little like microclimate, and the rocks were like they had like this like blackish glowing sort of like color to them. It was just really cool. And like, I asked the winemaker, who was wearing Adidas shoes, by the way, I was like, you're cool. I was like, can I take this home with me? And he was like, absolutely. Like, it's just like was like very unique to this region. Because this is also a microclimate, it gets very windy there. And so that is just a natural pesticide management system. And if you've ever had a garden yourself, you know, my husband and I, Dave and I garden, you know, we don't get a lot of wind coming through our backyard gardens just because we've got two houses sort of blocking everything on either side. So we have to prune a lot. And we have to use organic pest control. But when you've got these Atlantic, you know, these maritime influences coming in and sort of blows all the pests away, you really don't need to get crazy with pest management. So I want you to go back to those slides, and I want to share a couple more pictures just to dive into the soil. So this that was my my former colleague taking a photo of the vine up close. That's Melon de Bourgogne on the vine. You can see he's stooping down, so these vines don't get super tall. This is an older vine also, and so the winemaker was telling me that this was one of his oldest vines, and this is obviously why we were taking photos of it, because it was kind of special. You may see on your label, if any of yours say Via Vine. I know, Nicole, the second bottle that you sent me did say that. So Via Vine translates to older vines. And something I would suggest looking for when you're shopping for Muscadet, it's just going to impart more character. So this vine, I can't remember because this was so long ago. This was maybe about 8 years ago. I think this vine was like 60 years old, which is kind of a big deal. You know, where most vines in California are like 25 to 30 years old, just to put that into perspective. You can go on to the next slide. So that's a close-up of the soil. And this is specific to the wines. This came off of the winery that Jimmy, you, and Becky are both drinking. So this is that clay, sandy soil mix type with rock that you see here. And you can go to the next slide. This is the schist I'm talking about. See the black and some of the orange and things, like it's just truly, truly unique. Like other areas where you see this is Germany when they plant Riesling. And it really makes wines just like zippy and racy and just lip smacking good. And you can go to the next slide. That's an even more dialed in look at the schist. I mean, it almost looks like you could wear that like around, you know, clean that up a bit and you could wear it around your neck, like a piece of jewelry. It's really, really pretty. Want to double check really quick. So you can go to the next slide. So this is the same winery that I was visiting, and pretty humble winery here, super small. What you're looking at here, you might be like, what the hell is all that? Underneath is where the fermentation happens. So underneath here are these large cement tanks. When they do harvest, they bring them in and they go down underneath. They're in the ground.
Like a gas station.
Right. Like it's insane. Like, so this is a very common practice in this region. And why are they doing this? Is that because they want to keep the wine, it's a natural way to keep the wine at temperature. In like, when you go to like Napa Valley, for example, you know, they would never have a practice like this, but they have temperature controlled tanks that are upright where it's all controlled by probably electricity, you know, so they have to pay for that. This is all natural here. So it's just Mother Earth doing its thing, taking care of the process, keeping it at cellar temperature. You may see on your labels, I know ours says it, Sur Lie. I'll type it in the comments.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's embossed on the bottle. Like that's, yeah, it's usually embossed on the bottle above the label. And so we've talked about this before, but just to remind you, it means like on the lees is what it's translated to. And lees are the dead yeast cells that are left over from the fermentation process. And that's a good thing. So it creates a more complex wine. So number 2 thing to look for when buying Muscadet is Sur Lie. So what was the first thing? Who remembers?
Was
The Via Vin.
Vines.
sub-region.
Yeah, all vines.
Vine.
The Avine.
Vin and Muscadet Sevreman, yes. And Sur Lie. Sur Lie is like a passion project for winemakers in Muscadet, for making world-class Muscadet that you can actually age. Most people don't think that. It creates a far more complex wine. Some producers, like this producer that I was visiting, they aged Sur Lie for 2 to 3 years before bottling it. So it's sitting underground here in these cement vats, which is basically like a square tank, if you will, for 2 to 3 years. So they harvest, and then they're not putting the wine for sale for another 2+ years. Like, so it's pretty crazy. So what does that do to the wine? Like the structure becomes more rich. It becomes more Chablis-like in style. You know, far more complex. I think, Nicole, the wine that you sent me, the second one, is one that would be, like, that's why I was like, don't open that tonight. Like, that's definitely a little bit more of something special. Yeah. Absolutely. So, generally speaking...
Neither of them were expensive. I think one was like 15 and one was like 11.
I know, right? Like, that's what's so crazy about... So, this process that I'm showing here, for them to do this and not be able to go to immediate release, like we talked about Dolcetto last week, where they can just go to immediate bottling and boom, here, buy it. Here, they're aging this wine for 2 to 3 years, a white wine, before they can actually profit from it. Like, I mean, and that's just crazy. I mean, this is what makes it unique and world class. I mean, it's nuts to me. And so let's talk about like what's in our glass. I'm glad, first of all, that everyone's enjoying what's in your glass. Cheers again.
Cheers.
I think, Laurel, what you're drinking is probably close to Muscadet, that in style. So even though you didn't have that, but you know, it's definitely sort of similar for being an Italian wine.
Yeah, very nice. I'm enjoying it.
The first thing you're going to notice, acidity. Apparent acidity. Like, you're probably puckering up a bit, like that's what acidity does. Tannins does it also. I like to call them like zippy, like they're racy, like they're not like fat and flabby or anything like Chardonnay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dave, you're going to ask, what does zippy mean?
No, I was adding your sister to the call.
Oh, sorry.
She was sitting online. We were sharing the slides. So.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Bertha. You're getting, like, there are also lots of lemon, lime, citrusy flavors. Mm-hmm. And they're crisp. They're refreshing. There's just a really nice thirst-quenching characteristic to them. Excellent for the summer. It does get really hot. Like when I was in Nantes, it was really hot, and like a lot of the these buildings in France, they're like from centuries old. They don't have air conditioning, so you're sitting inside and you're sweating your butt off, and the last thing you want is something like Cabernet. So something like this is like, you know, fabulous. What's also really, really special about Muscadet is the saltiness. You get a real salinity to the wine. Like, if you really start to dive in a little bit more, and this is why it's the influence from the Atlantic, and the influence like you get from that, like these coastal breezes, because you know, I know you guys are, some of you are in Maryland and you're along the coast, and some of us are in California. We know what salt air, like off the ocean, does to things, you know, like it definitely imparts like character, whether it destroys your car or like makes your wine better, you know, like
Story.
yeah. So this is why, like, food wise, it does so well with seafood. I mean, it especially oysters. Like, it is perfect with oysters on the half shell. I know Dave hates them. I love them. I especially love like the Meunier that comes with the oil and like the
red wine vinegar.
Oh my God. Oh. Perfect. When I lived in San Francisco, I had an oyster bar that I took care of, and this was their like house wine, basically.
Wow.
Yeah. So it is. There are other wines also that pair great with oysters on the half. Champagne, of course, any sparkling wine, Sancerre, Pouilly-Fumé, you know, a number of things. But for whatever reason, Muscadet is that magic pairing. And, you know, I talked about that like when we did Vermentino, and I was talking about pesto and like one of those magical pairings. Like Muscadet and oysters is one of those magical pairings. So any other sort of raw, like crudo, would do really well. So it's a shame that when, you know, we go out and eat sushi, not all of the sushi restaurants it's just, they don't know about it. You know, it's usually just a really nice Japanese owner that just buys like stuff his rep tells him to. But the high-end sushi places in the major cities like San Francisco and like New York City, they're always going to have like a Muscadet. It just pairs really, really perfectly. And mousse frite. Who knows what mousse frite is?
Oh, I know. David knows. I know.
There's a great place. I live in Culver City, and there's a great place that has moules frites. They have like a Thursday night all-you-can-eat situation. It's so good.
That sounds like an all-you-can-eat situation.
I love Culver City. My best friend used to live like 2 seconds from the downtown area.
It's called Meat in Paris, if anybody's ever in that area.
Hopefully. Yeah, like that.
And they have curbside. Right. I've done it.
They eat them with mayonnaise in Belgium. That's the big condiment you get with it. You get a pile of mayonnaise, some mussels, and fries.
Wow. That's heavy.
Sounds interesting. And I was in it for the mussels and fries. The mayo is
add some
throwing
mayo.
me.
Never know.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, apparently the Belgians swear by it, and they've done pretty well.
And the Germans also same thing. They want mayo. And in France, actually, they pretty much Europe does like we're Americans. We want it with ketchup, but yeah, you go to Europe and you order fries, they serve it with mayo. But
and it's like real mayo too. It's not like
real mayo. It's not like Miracle Whip.
No Miracle Whip.
No.
One of the light version.
No.
And it's usually like they put like tarragon in it, and so it's like really, really like it's like good. Like it's like you're like licking your fingers with mayo, and you're like, okay. I guess the French.
It sounds like a nap after that. French fries, mayo, like all the heavy things together.
I know.
Put a little wine with that and take a nap.
And they're all in good shape, you know?
Have a beer, take a nap, go back to work. That's what Belgium is like.
Yeah, they're like a super healthy like country, aren't they?
Finish work.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're a bus driver, so it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, so this dish, Mouille is actually like a specialty in the city of Nantes, which is where we're like the city that's west of Muscadet. And traditionally what they do there is they actually make, because everywhere it's made with white wine, but there they actually use Muscadet. So it's of course a natural, like perfect pairing. And what's different when you're in France and you order this dish, when you order it here, like it's not like an entree. Like for some reason in the United States, we make things an entree that are appetizer in Europe. Like it's just not like, I mean, sure, if I could probably eat that for dinner, but you know, it's funny, I was in Lyon and or Dijon, sorry, and I ordered it, and my French friend looked at me and he was like, are you gonna eat all that? Because it's served like family style.
Wow.
And it came out in this massive thing, and everybody else ordered like burgers, and I'm sitting here with this like bucket of like Mouille. Anyway, just a little story. So what else does it pair well with? Salmon. I know a lot of people love salmon. Chicken. So some of the lighter style. We're having chicken tonight since my husband hates oysters, and I wasn't going to come home and shuck them. And I know my sister will love this. Grilled cheese sandwiches. So especially like cheeses.
You know I love my cheese.
Yep. Same.
Me too.
I know. I eat it every day. Like
It's my weakness.
me too.
I bought your manchego cheese the other day.
Oh, did you like it?
I haven't had it yet. I got some cheeses, and I got a Verdejo, and I got another dolcetto, so I'm doing make my own little wine and cheese.
List.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. No, I love
But
it.
I'm using my notes that are stuck in my cookbook.
Yeah, no, I love hearing the stories. And like this, I want to say, because I love grilled cheese too. Like sometimes, you know, I work mostly from home, and Dave will come into the kitchen and he's like, what are you making? And I'm like, you know, I'm like a 5-year-old. I'm making a grilled cheese sandwich.
Why do I feel like your grilled cheese, like, did you ever see the movie Chef?
Yes.
The food truck food? Like the,
yeah.
the gourmet grilled cheese that he makes in that, Nicole. I know that you're
Fancy.
just throwing some Velveeta on some white bread.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no American cheese. There's no butter. It's just like.
No, that's like the most epic looking grilled cheese, and I could totally see Nicole making that. It's like 6 different kinds of this like exotic.
It's the fresh basil from the
cheese
garden,
and
the homegrown tomatoes.
Homemade bread.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like some, you know, Gruyere or something. It's not like
Not your kids' grilled cheese.
it's not Velveeta.
There is no taking the plastic off the cheese first in her version.
No.
Back in the day, she put a tofu in there.
Yeah. It was true
That is-
story. I was a vegetarian for a long time.
Dark history.
Yeah.
That was before we knew each other. So
Yeah. Anyway, so if you do make, so even just a simple grilled cheese with Swiss cheese, you know, like it would do really well. Gruyere.
Yes. Dinky.
Yeah. Well,
A Swiss and cheddar, little Swiss and cheddar mixed in a grilled cheese is my absolute favorite grilled cheese.
it's an awesome pairing. I agree.
I mean, add like some tomatoes and basil maybe sometimes, but the best.
and a little drizzle of something. I'm kidding.
Truffle
So
oil,
also-
naturally.
Yeah.
Fancy.
Yeah. So I also talk about like, because I know I want to, you know, there's a lot of friends of mine that are vegetarians, and I used to be one. So this is also a good vegetarian wine. Pairs really well with summer veggies. So dishes you make with squashes or sunchokes, artichokes, you know, that sort of thing would be really good. And tonight we're having like a lemon butter herb chicken that we're going to pair with this wine. And last before least, I just wanted to share, hopefully once again, we'll be invited back to Europe. And if, you know, we ever get to travel together, this is a region that is just absolutely stunning. So slide number 11, right after this.
sorry.
That is, it was really hard for me to find a really cool snapshot of the city of Nantes.
I've not-
It's small, but it's so rad. It's right on the Atlantic coast. And it, like I mentioned earlier, because that, you know, used to be this like sleepy port town, but not anymore. It's really become a city more like San Francisco. Somebody's ringing. And so what we've seen as a common thread when I've been sharing photos of Old World is that the church is sort of the center, and then the rest of the city gets built outside of that. So you can see like all these older buildings, that is like the downtown area, so to speak. And if you look a little bit further outside where like the green is, you can see these more modern buildings, office buildings. So when I'm talking about like the relation to San Francisco, it is like become this the place where French businesses, like the startups of the world, is being created in France. It's also a very green city. There's not a lot of cars here. People rely on public transportation, and the public transportation is like, you know, it's not powered by gas, like it's all electricity. Recycling everywhere. Like it is a very green city. And so for me, like I was living in San Francisco at the time that I was like visiting here, and I was like, oh my God, it's like a baby San Francisco. Except nobody's pooping on the sidewalks. Like it's a very clean city. You know, laid back. Like I hate like traveling and going to like big cities. And so cities like this really speak to me. It's very worldly. Art is really big here. Music is really big. But there's still, if you go to the next slide, history. This is the Cathedral de Nantes, or however you would pronounce it in French. And so it looks very similar to Notre Dame. This actual last week, or I think the week before, sadly, it caught on fire. I didn't catch up to it. Similar to the Notre Dame, correct.
You think about this building structure that catches on fire, like.
Yeah, and I love like the architecture, like having come from Baltimore City, like I love Gothic architecture. And so that is what is like dominant throughout France, is like this Gothic architecture, and it's really cool. The church is not burned to the ground or anything. You know, I haven't followed up on the story, but I just wanted to share like this photo just to talk about it a little bit. You can go to the next photo or slide. This is one of the most rad wine bars I've ever been to. It's so small. So I will say, as a side note, for traveling to Nantes, like if you want to do a bar crawl sort of thing, wine bar crawl, or just a wine, like a bar crawl, this is the coolest city to do it. It reminded me of like a dive bar, because it was just sort of dark. And, you know, you have to sit really close to each other and look at those like old school bar stools. And so the barkeep in the background, like she's like slicing up some fresh meat. It was just so cool. And the name of it is La Comédie des Vines. And they serve like 30 to 40 wines by the glass. You know, most wine bars or restaurants you go to usually have about 10 offerings. So it was just a super rad experience. And what else is cool about this city is that it, like I mentioned, that it's really worldly. You get cuisine from all over the world. So for me, like that was super refreshing, because this was on the last leg of my almost 14-day French tour, which was all French food. So I was just, it was like baguette, 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 cheese, 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 you know, and some other foods from France that like pate, which I cannot eat. So I was just like loving this town. I was just like, oh my God, okay, finally we can get something that's not a baguette and it's not cheese, which it's okay, but I love it. I eat it every day. But I think when you're eating like that for a number of days, like it just gets really old. The next slide. So this is an Indian restaurant in France. in the city and not. And this place was so rad. I felt like I was sitting in a cellar, like a wine cellar. You can see the brick, like that's the exposed brick that they have in France compared to like exposed brick that we have like on the East Coast. It was so cool. It was the best Indian food that I have ever had in my life, because Indian food in the United States is completely Americanized unless you have Southern Indian. Our curries it's mostly Northern Indian that we get in the United States, they're heavy and there's a lot of heavy cream and there's a lot of yogurt and it's super heavy. This was not the case here. This was so good. It was so cheap, and it was all focused around like a really good wine list as well, or I should say the wine list was focused around the food, and it was just unbelievable to me, because when you go to an Indian restaurant, pretty much anywhere in the United States, generally speaking, they don't have good wine lists. You know, they have like stuff like you'll see, because it's okay. They don't know about wine. Like, so they just allow their wine rep that they have to buy it from, send them the wine. And so those guys will just send them stuff they need to make quota on. Obviously not the case in France, you know, like this is not like a tourist town. Nantes is really not tourist driven. Nantes is a major town for the commerce in the country of France. It's where the majority of the startups are. So it's sort of like going to San Francisco. You're on a much smaller scale. You're going to get really world-class wines, local world-class wines with fantastic food that's not just local, but you can get global sort of food. So that's what I got. If anyone's got any questions or share or whatever.
Whoops.
I looked up about the cathedral. It's supposed to take about 3 years for it to rebuild. And they lost a lot of artifacts, like in apparently an organ that had survived like a bunch of like major wars. Apparently it was damaged, a lot of like other artifacts, but it's not completely debilitated. And the government said that they're willing to support financially whatever it'll take. So it'll be up and running again at some point.
Yeah.
By the time they let us back in.
Exactly. And the grand opening will be 3 years, so that's probably
That's
right.
right.
The Rona and not.
Yeah.
I know I keep thinking maybe the Sagrada Familia will be done by the time we can get back in.
That was one of the most amazing experiences.
I loved it.
It's only been like 20 years that they've been working on it.
I know, but isn't it supposed to be done sometime in the next?
Sure.
His whole
5
plan
years?
was not at all. I studied Spanish in college, and his whole entire plan was like just to be continuously evolving. When were you there, Jenny?
I was there. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago.
I was there probably about 5 years. Actually, I think I coupled it with this trip I just shared about.
I was there in 2008.
I think I was
12
there
years ago, and it was full on under construction. Like, well, we're sorry, it's slightly closed right now.
Yeah.
Really? When's it going to be done? Oh, pretty soon.
Yeah, I was like one of the first in line, and I was there for 3 hours, and I probably spent a half hour in tears.
No, they're Spanish. They need to take their time, have some lunch, maybe a nap.
Fiesta.
Well, then take advantage
to it,
of
you know?
like, you know, how much they can get to fund it. But amazing experience. We'll go back to Spain on another little trip with a wine, because there's definitely some really great summer white wines that we can have from Spain. The red wines are a little trickier. They're a lot of them can be really heavy. So we'll visit them in the fall when things eventually cool down. Any other questions?
No, I'm excited to know that this pairs well with sushi too, because I never know what to eat or drink with sushi. half the
Same,
time.
because I don't like sake.
Yeah, same.
I don't like sake.
I don't like sake.
But a lot of times, but a lot of sushi bars you go to aren't going to have this either. It's a Chard and a Pinot or something, something along those lines. But I never know like really exactly what to drink with it. So.
Well, the benefit of the COVID is the fact that everything is carry out. So you get to create your own pairing.
Yeah, you get to
Yeah.
You're good to go.
Oh, but our best sushi place closed, Becky. She's so closed.
No,
Oh,
you have to
remember
try
that
the
place.
one that's on the square. Suzuka or whatever it is. Suko, I forgot what it is. But it's the one that opened up in the fireplace in the firehouse. right in the middle of the square. It's
Ooh, I'll have
supposed
to
to
try
be
that one.
fantastic.
It's really great. We're going to talk about, I want to, sorry, I just got a text. Grape, I'm going to type it out because it's a mouthful.
Okay, great. Whenever I see them, I'm just like showing them to the wine people, like whatever this one is.
Yeah,
Definitely
Yeah.
never heard of this one.
It's called Norella Mascalaise, and it honestly is probably hands down one of my favorite red wines. If
Well, that's something we haven't heard before.
I was gonna say.
Brand new information.
I know. We poured it. This was our red wine at our wedding. So
Oh, nice.
for those that were at our wedding and you had some red wine, this is what you drank. And I was amazed at the feedback that I got from some of my friends that were there, like taking bottle shots and sending me pictures and saying, "Where the hell do I get this?" They had no idea how to pronounce it. They didn't even know what it was. They just knew that it was good. And it's really inexpensive too, which is great. You know my MO. I always like to find good value. When I lived up in San Francisco, Norella Mascalaise was like the it red wine. Like it was the trendy. All the sommeliers were after it. I sold like the producer I have in my portfolio like out the wazoo. It's insane. So Norella Mascalaise, it comes from Sicily. It's an indigenous grape there. You can find it in the still format, and you can also, if you're lucky, maybe find it in a sparkling format. So feel free to show up with whatever you want.
You know, if I can find the sparkles, I will find them.
Right. I know. I love it. Yeah, it's very Pinot Noir like, but with like a Sicilian sort of like edge, if that translates, you know.
Is this a chilled one?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Like I cellar, like, you know, I would serve it
Okay.
at like, you know, like not at like 75 degrees, you know, but I would, you know, at a just a little bit of a cooler temperature.
Maybe 20, 30 minutes in the fridge.
Exactly. Like how you
Okay.
would enjoy like a Pinot Noir, how, you know, something like that. It might be hard to find. If you can't find it, you know, let me know, and it's okay. This is one of these grapes or wines also, that I really want to get people more into, because it's just really cool. It pairs really well with a lot of different foods. There's a lot of history that goes into Sicily, and they're really inexpensive.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So what I just screenshot what popped up so I'm going to do this every week now. I'm just going to pop up what posts at Pogo.
I think this is a great idea, actually.
But that's why I ended up with this last week. You know, you don't know till you ask. So when I put that in, those are the two that popped up there. But is that the same? Obviously, it says it on the bottom one. Is the top
I'm
one
gonna look up now.
Oh yeah, the top one, the Contrada, is killer. Like absolutely. I mean, you see the price point. It's
Well, I would
$50.
hope so for $50 a bottle.
Yeah.
You
Right.
have one. If you still have wine from the last shipment that you got from me, Jimmy, you have a Norella Mascalaise in your box. If not, the new shipment that is coming to you, I put in a Norella.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, but like, sorry, I mean, I know the top one there, that is like as geeky as it gets. So
Oh, really?
yeah, super geeky.
Sometimes you just got to go geek out, though. So that's not necessarily a bad
So
thing.
it would be one I'd put in your cellar, honestly. Like,
Okay.
you know,
Good to
like
know.
just want something to join for the party, the one down below.
Thank you for another wonderful night.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Nicole
Bye,
just
everybody.
Toodles.
Noodles. Thanks for coming, everyone. And once again, glad to turn you all on to a new wine. Next week is red, and I'm going to be talking about Norella Mascalaise. It's an indigenous red wine, or red grape, I should say, from the region of Sicily. One of my favorites, and I think one that you're really going to enjoy. So I hope to see you next week.